Hey everybody, this is Olga with AskYourSoul.org, and on this channel we do soul messages and discuss manifesting, divine guidance, and other fun stuff. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about something that I feel like this channel literally revolves around, and that is, how can you tell if what you're going through is a soul lesson or if it's something that you have unconsciously manifested into your life? So essentially, this is free will versus destiny type of a discussion. So if you're into it, get yourself comfortable, get a cup of coffee, tea, vodka, I don't care. No judgment on my part. And settle down and let's have a chat where I literally just talk to myself and you guys listen. Yay! Fun times! But I do hope I'll get at least some comments and maybe likes. That would be awesome. Anyways, okay, so here's what I think about this topic, and I'll tell you why I think this way. The reason I have this opinion that you're about to hear is because I'm kind of obsessed with listening to near-death experience stories, and I have been for a long time, so there are hundreds, if not thousands, that I have listened to. And this is on top of, a lot of spirituality-related books and stuff like that, and interviews or whatnot. So I just feel like near-death experiences is literally the closest that we can get to understanding the divine, if you know what I mean. And thankfully, nowadays, with our advanced technologies, we're a lot more likely to bring someone back after they have an experience where they would probably die maybe, 20, 30, 50, 100 years ago. It would most likely just be death. But that's not the case anymore today, especially in those areas where medical technology is advanced. So from what I gather, here's what destiny is, right? Like, this is the stuff, it's not even what destiny is, it's actually stuff that you can't really control necessarily. This is just what you come into this world with, and whether or not you're stuck with it all depends, but here it is. So the geographical location where you're born and you spend the first few years of your life, your birth family, your parents, siblings, guardians, the language your family speaks, and consequently you speak as well. Physical health and limitations that you have at birth, and especially serious ones where they can't really be changed, whether it's related to the way that your brain functions or it's related to, just physical health and certain diseases or disorders that you're born with and that end up being a part of your life, probably until the day you die, right? So that happens, unfortunately, a lot too. But, well, I say unfortunately from this human perspective, but what do I know, right? So also your financial situation that you're born into, not your current financial situation necessarily, but the one that you're born into. And I don't know if I'm missing anything, and please feel free to comment if you would like to add to this list. But the only other two I can think of right now are life-changing accidents that you have pretty much at any point in life, right? Like, for example, a near-death experience. I feel like a lot of those, if not all of them, are a part of your soul plan, your soul lesson, because this is literally what people say when they come back from a near-death experience. They say, oh, this was a part of the plan. Although not necessarily, because sometimes from what I've heard, let's say if you are not following your soul's path for this lifetime, then you have a number of chances to course correct, and if you keep not using them, then you might have a traumatic experience that can result in an NDE, which is also not necessarily the case. Like, you may not even have an NDE at all. But still, basically, from what I gather, most of the time, if an accident is a very life-changing situation, so it's not something that, like, let's say you broke a leg or something, which, yeah, of course it's traumatic as well, but it's not necessarily life-changing, you know what I mean? It can be difficult, it can take time to heal, it can change maybe certain points of view, maybe it can still psychologically affect you, but not necessarily to the extent that, let's say, a traumatic accident where you end up being in a coma for like 5 years or something crazy like that, you know what I mean? You would not necessarily get affected the same way from those two experiences. Although I feel like everything is so subjective. So anyways, and the only other thing I could think of as quote unquote destiny is the most important people in your life that you either have throughout your whole life. So maybe like your parents or your best friend or your siblings that you can't really, like they're such a big part of your life, regardless of what you do. Unless you decide to not have them as a big part of your life, which is also a choice, right? And not only your BFFs and amazing people whom you love and your family, whether they're good or not, quote unquote, but also your quote unquote enemies and people who really get you to discover something about yourself or to change something about yourself or your life. Someone who actually has a big impact on you. And that person can literally be just some random person that you meet at a store, or like an attacker who makes you question your whole existence after that attack has taken place, for example. So just someone who somehow gets you to change your life or to see your life differently or just really affects you in a very deep way. So that's kind of my list of what could be kind of predetermined, pre-decided, and is a part of our soul lesson or soul plan for this lifetime. But again, who knows, right? Like, this is just my thoughts on the subject. So again, feel free to comment what you think and if you would like to add to this list. So that also means that basically the rest of your life and the rest of the areas of your life you can probably control in some way, whether it's making a 180 and completely changing your life, or just making a slight change that would still be important in some way. So I also want to emphasize that a lot of the time, even stuff that is predestined, even stuff that we are supposed to go through, you can always have a choice of how you react to it, right? So this is where your personal power, and with great power comes great responsibility, right? So this is where your power and your responsibility comes in terms of how do you think of the situation? How do you interpret it in your mind? And this is what I feel like a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy revolves around, just reframing a way you think of a certain situation in order for it to become more beneficial to you psychologically, or just more positive in general. And I also want to add something that I just recently, I was listening to another audiobook by Frederick Dodson, which if you haven't listened to his audiobooks or read them, I highly, highly recommend, because a lot of them are just awesome, especially when it comes to understanding how manifestation works and just how everything in life operates, to be honest. Like it's very, and especially energetically. Anyways, just so much useful, important information that I highly recommend. I'm probably going to include some links to his books that I like, either in a pinned comment or just in the description box. Anyway, so he mentioned something that I thought was interesting. He said that a certain percentage of our lives is actually pure randomness. I thought that was so interesting. And he did mention that it's not like a huge percentage. So it was definitely less than 10%. Like maybe, I don't want to lie, but I think it was like 7 or 8% that he said. And that was like pure randomness. So it's kind of interesting to me, because I've always thought of life, well, not always, but for most of my life when I got into all the spiritual stuff, I started thinking of it as in terms of like co-creating our destiny, right? Like with the higher force, or whether it's God or our higher self or both, or our subconscious or all of the above, it doesn't matter so much. It's something unseen that has great power over our lives, basically, right? So many, many years ago when I was taught about God and stuff like that, I thought it was just God, right? Like God controls everything. And then as I started to explore and learn more about spirituality, I started realizing that, the law of attraction exists, and much later, the law of assumption. So just the power that we have when it comes to manifesting and that thoughts create, right? So I eventually came to the conclusion that we must be co-creating with that other higher force or power. So it made sense in my mind, which is the opposite of limitless, that we probably do it like 50-50, right? Like 50% is God / higher power and 50% is just us with our minds and brain and free will. And then later that thinking evolved into believing that even God is not so much outside of ourselves. So maybe it's our higher self who pre-plans this life and controls the other 50%. So it's still us technically, just in a different way energetically, if that makes sense. And now with Frederick mentioning randomness, I was like, wait a minute. My whole zone of proximal development has shifted. Well, after you said that, I was like, wait, what? How is that even possible? Like, what randomness? I don't believe in randomness. I don't believe in coincidences. I feel like it's all purposefully, carefully orchestrated by God / higher power / higher self. It's so annoying that I don't even know what name to use, but I hope it makes sense. So now I'm kind of open to that idea that a small percentage of what happens is pure randomness, just for the fun of it, I guess. Not sure who's having fun, probably our higher self again. But regardless, I don't know if it's 50-50 anymore. I feel like we actually have a lot more power over our lives than we realize, as a human being. Because again, even if things that we can't control happen, we ultimately are the ones who decide what to make of it. We're the ones who change our lives or not change our lives accordingly. So for example, and this is like a pretty extreme example probably, let's say someone is an addict and they're having a really, really, really hard time in their lives, and they come to a point where they hit rock bottom, and that rock bottom can actually get them to completely change their ways. And I'm sure you've seen and heard of examples of people like that who have completely changed their ways and stopped using and instead became the opposite of the person they used to be. And they're someone who is proud to be who they are now. Versus, if you are literally in the same situation and that rock bottom happens, you can decide that this is too much for you, you can't do this anymore, and you just can't handle life anymore. And then the person commits suicide, for example. So what I'm trying to say is no matter how you got to a certain point, you literally choose a reality for yourself at every single moment of time when you're conscious of that. And if you're familiar with Bashar, by the way, a channeled being that I highly recommend you check out as well on YouTube, he also says that we create infinite number of realities per second. They're just all very, 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 very similar. They're almost identical, and that's why it doesn't feel like we are creating a new reality. But we are, and that's why every possible moment of time, we can choose something different. We can completely change our lives. Even in the most dire circumstances, in the craziest situations, we have a lot more power than we think. So I think that was the important message I wanted to get across, that even though, yes, there is definitely some stuff that is quote-unquote predestined and that is a part of our soul lessons or our soul plan for this lifetime, we still have a ton of power. We can still change a lot. And I also think it's important to mention that suffering is optional. I know it's easy to say, but I feel like a lot of it is self-created. Just speaking from my personal experience, we don't have to create so much suffering for ourselves. We really can choose. And there are many tools that are available for us to change the way that we perceive the world and just to diminish suffering, So whether it's meditation, just conscious breathing, EFT, art, music, whatever the heck makes you feel better, ultimately. Scripting, journaling, whatever it is, it's always something that, there's always something you can do in the moment, even if it's just conscious breathing, which is very powerful as well. So I just wanted to remind you that you're a very powerful master manifester, regardless of how tough your soul lessons are for this lifetime. And if they're tough, then congratulations, because that means you are a very strong and brave soul who has decided to experience that stuff. So good for you. And I know you can get through it. And if you're here listening to this, then obviously you know about the power of manifestation and you're on your way of creating an awesome reality for yourself. So congrats. Okay, before I end this video, let's do another soul message card pull. And for this one, I'm using Soul Lessons and Soul Purpose Oracle cards by Sonia Choquet. I think I've used it in one of my previous videos as well. Just felt like the right deck to use for this topic. So let's get a message for you. This is what you need to hear about your soul lesson for this life, or soul lessons for this life. I think I'm going to pull a couple of them. And whenever you're hearing this, this is a timeless reading. This is just something your soul wants you to know about your soul plans or your soul lessons. Okay, so let's see what we got. Okay, I pulled 3 cards, and here they are. And there's this first time I love detach from drama. Ooh, is someone's life dramatic right now? And then the next one is make necessary sacrifices. And lastly, laugh at your demons. Ooh, powerful. Okay, well, the first one I feel like definitely has to do something with your relationships. So if there's any drama in your current relationships, which is usually the case, right? Then one of your soul messages for today is the fact that it's very important for you to look at that situation from a standpoint of an observer and just be a little bit more critical about how attached you are to that situation or that person and how that's affecting your life. If you feel like it has a negative effect on your life, then it's time to reevaluate if something can be changed in that relationship. If you need this person in your life, maybe it's a toxic relationship that you do not need in your life anymore. And by the way, we can always change our soul contracts. Once you feel like you've had enough from a certain soul contract to a certain person, then maybe it's time to let them go. And only you get to decide that. I just feel like sometimes we literally don't have a choice of whether or not to let someone go because, let's say, they're just taken from our life in some way. But if you just feel like this drama won't stop and you're just totally over it and fed up, then be over it. Maybe it's also part of your lesson to help you realize how strong you are and to help you see what's important in life. So tuning into your own power and deciding what's best for you and being strong enough to say no to those who don't deserve a yes from you right now. I think that's the important message here. And I think it fits well with the next card, which is make necessary sacrifices, because even though the important relationships in our lives are usually very hard to let go of, and there's a lot that goes into that, and they can linger in our lives for years and years and years, and we just don't know what the hell to do with it. Sometimes it's important to make the necessary sacrifices, whatever that means to you, in order to progress in life, in order to either move on by yourself or move on together. So you know what those sacrifices are. I can't tell you what they are, but maybe it's time to do this. I think that's the message here. But also I love that it says laugh at your demons. And for this one, I actually want to read you what the guidebook says for these cards. I'm just going to read you what the soul purpose. It says your soul's purpose and your soul's lesson. So the soul's purpose right now is to restrain your critical ego and return to the love of your higher self. Be aware of every aspect of your life in which you feel stuck and recognize this as only appearance. All things will be solved in time. I love that. And then your soul's lesson is break free of the psychic bondage that arises from your overly judgmental ego. Feel the low quality of vibration that such doom, gloom, and harshness brings about. Ease up on yourself. Nothing is that bad. Deconstruct the energetic barbed wire fence around your heart and turn off the psychic, quote-unquote, go-away sign that you flash at the world. As intense as your present situation may seem, and as bad as you feel, know that your higher self will guide you if you let it. Seek your spirit's clear perspective by activating your humor, blessing your mess, and trusting that it will all straighten out. As you laugh, be certain that it will. I love this message. See, it's like you're being too damn hard on yourself again, aren't you? You gotta stop that, boo. You gotta stop that. If there's anything in the situation that you can laugh about and you can see it from like your higher self perspective, that's something to focus on. Because again, as a mere mortal, we take shit way too seriously most of the time. Like, it just seems like it's such a big deal, and as the years go by, most of the time, obviously not for all situations, but for a lot of them, probably for most of them, as the years go by, you look back at it and you're like, why the hell was I even so, like, upset about that? That's just silly, So if this is one of those situations, even though it sounds like it's a really tough one, but if you think that there is a chance that years down the line, you're going to look back at this and you'll have a very different point of view, then try to tap into that energy. Try to see it from a more observational point of view and a more spiritual point of view. And please don't be hard on yourself. Like, whatever it is, just don't add to it by being hard on yourself. Don't add more misery to it. That's very unnecessary. So yeah, I just want you to know that you will get through this sooner or later, hopefully sooner. This too shall pass, which is literally one of my favorite quotes of all time, because it's so true, whether it's good or bad. So if there's someone you need to let go of in your life, maybe this is your sign that you have manifested, right? Or your higher self has manifested that it's time to do that. But it doesn't have to be all miserable, is what I'm trying to say. If you can find some humor in the situation and not be too harsh on yourself and even the other person or people, that's what's going to help you get through it faster and easier. And remember that you can always use affirmations for free to manifest whatever the hell you want. So I just want to wish you the best of luck getting through this soul lesson that you're going through right now and becoming stronger for it and smarter and learning whatever it is that your soul wanted you to learn in the best possible way. That's not too traumatic, hopefully. Anyways, I got to run, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the like button, and it doesn't cost you anything, but it would really help me out. And thanks so much for listening, for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And I'm sending you so much love and light. And I just want you to know you got this. You're a master manifester. So every day you choose how to manifest the best life for yourself. And with that, I'm going to go. Thanks again, y'all. Love you. Bye.